Aloha, Chef Keoni here. Today we're cooking a Pulehu rub roasted strip loin served with sweet Hawaiian rolls, island-style horseradish sauce, and Lomi tomato. For this recipe, I'm going to be using a 5 to 6 pound strip loin roast. And you want to make sure it's trimmed and ready to go. Now the butchers can do this for you at the store. I also take it home and I'll just do some touch-up work. And so as you can see in the top here, they've cleaned up most of what we call this sort of sinew. And you can see there's a little bit left here. So I'm going to take my knife here and you just want to kind of just very lightly push a thin knife underneath it and trim it off. You take that piece here, you see a little bit left there. And then I'm going to take my knife here and cut it down because this connective tissue will be tough. Okay, so I'm taking that piece off and you can see how it's even here now. The next thing you want to do is you want a nice fat cap. It adds flavor, but it also gives moisture to the roast. But you want it to be about a 1/4 inch thick. And the way you can tell that it's a 1/4 inch thick is you want to be pressing into it. And here I can feel that it's really firm. So I'm going to trim some of that off over here. You can see there's some give. There's give here. There's give here. Right here, there's a little bit more than I want. So trimming some of that off. Again, the goal is to have about a 1/4 inch in the slices when you're done here. And now this roast is ready to go. Okay, next we're gonna make the Pulehu rub. Now, if this is the first time you're making it, you wanna follow the recipe so you can get a sense, a feel for the ratios here. But I'm gonna eyeball this thing and I'm gonna make a lot, more than I need, because this is really good to use for everything. So put some Alaea salt in here. Then I'm gonna put cracked black pepper. And I'm putting fresh because it has a better flavor. The oils, the essential oils are still in the peppercorns when I'm doing it this way. If you don't have it, then use the pepper you have. But this is really where you can really smell it. It smells great right now. Then we got our garlic powder here. You can use granulated garlic if you want. You can also, one of the things I do sometimes when I make this is I'll throw some chili flakes in here. Ginger. This has a really nice kind of a local dimension to this. Then we add some onion powder. And again, this is like one of those seasonings that you make a lot because you're gonna use it for everything. You use it for Pulehu chicken, you're gonna use it for grilling vegetables. This will become your new everyday spice. Next, we're gonna season the strip loin. So we'll start with a little bit of shoyu. Lots of times when I used to make this, I would just use like the seasoning mix, but I found that a little shoyu kind of helps with the umami. It gets the flavors going. A little bit of liquid smoke, and this is a new addition I added because you know, it kind of replicates the idea if you're using a wood-fired oven. And I'm putting these on first before the oil because I want to give it a chance to start to penetrate into the strip loin here, where the oil, if I go first, will seal, it creates an outer layer. And I want to get that to happen after I put my seasoning on here. And then we're going to go in with our seasoning. Notice I'm keeping the seasoning like 8 to 10 inches above the roast because I want to have it evenly fall. And the other thing you want to do is generously season this because when you think about it, you have the whole roast and the only parts that will have seasoning are the very thin slices that are on here. So you generously season it because you're trying to compensate for the fact that the entire surface area of the majority of the slice you have will not have seasoning. Okay, so this looks good and it's nicely crusted. You can feel the salt and it's a very even thin layer across the top. And now we're gonna let it rest for 30 to 40 minutes at room temperature before we put it in the oven. While the roast is resting, preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that it's rested, I'm gonna place it on a pan and put it in the oven, and we're gonna let it oven sear for 15 minutes. Then lower the oven temperature to 325 degrees and continue roasting until the internal temperature reaches 120 degrees for rare, 130 degrees for medium rare, or 140 degrees for medium, depending on your preference. Now, what's really important is to use a meat thermometer, and they're very inexpensive. They have, you know, dial ones and they have digitals, but these are going to give you an accurate read on the internal temperature, and it's going to make sure that the roast that you're doing comes out perfectly. Once you achieve your desired temperature, remove the roast, tent it with foil, and let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes so the muscle relaxes and the juices redistribute for a more tender and flavorful roast. Before I show you how to make the horseradish sauce and Lomi tomato, I want to mention you can find ingredients to make this dish at your neighborhood Foodland. And for more recipes, visit foodland.com. So now we're gonna make the horseradish sauce. We have sour cream. And again, the recipe is great to follow, but this is also one of those recipes kind of go by feel and they always work out great. This is prepared horseradish, chili pepper water. Let me shake this up a little bit. Get that in there. Bring the Hawaii to this sauce. We'll put some green onions in there for color and flavor. And then we're gonna season it with some salt. And then we're gonna go ahead and mix it. Now, what's important here is that you mix it just till everything's incorporated, because if you keep mixing it, the sauce will become very liquidy, and then it doesn't have the kind of body you want when you make it at your slider. This is one of those sauces you can make it the way you like it. If you like it to be really spicy, add more horseradish. If you like it to be creamier, you can add less. You can also go crazy on the chili pepper water if you want. Put a little bit more green onions for garnish. I want to put this in the fridge to let it chill, and then we'll prepare the Lomi tomato. For the Lomi tomato, we're going to start with 2 whole tomatoes. These are Amuela tomatoes. When you're going to make Lomi tomato, what's important is you need to let them get as ripe as possible so you can try to get as much flavor as you can out of the tomato. Sometimes people will make their Lomi tomato, they'll make the onions the same size as the tomato dice. I like to make it smaller because onion, even though it's Maui onion, it can be like kind of pungent, right? So I'm gonna make these dice, but I'll make the dice smaller so that when I'm eating this, usually what I'll get is more tomato to onion ratio. And then we're gonna do some salt. I'm using regular salt, but if you have Hawaiian salt or Alaea, that works great too. And I think the green onion, the scallion, just gives it another dimension. You already have white onions in here, but the green onion gives it color, and it just adds another layer of complexity to the Lomi tomato. So we're gonna mix it. I'm gonna add a little bit more salt. And then I'm gonna add some ice. The ice kind of keeps it fresh. It'll also dilute in there. And also what happens is the ice and the tomato water and the onions, it creates its own sauce in here, which is really flavorful. And put some in a bowl here. So now we're gonna chill this until this is ready to serve. All right, now we're gonna carve our strip loin roast. I'm basically lightly shaving this down. And as I'm sure you can tell, the pieces that are on the furthest outside are gonna be the more done pieces. And as we get further in, you'll start to get pieces that are less cooked. I'm doing thin slices here because we're gonna have delicious sliders, but this is the exact kind of roast that you would do if you were gonna serve this for an entree, and all you do is you cut the slices thicker. And what's fun is I'll have this out there, and then when people come bring their plate, you say, okay, how thick do you want it, right? And that's it's like you get to be like you're in a hotel. So here we have our roasted strip loin, and I love to serve this family style. And we have it with our creamy horseradish. We've got Lomi tomato, and we have sweet Hawaiian rolls. Your guests can enjoy as is or build their own sliders. Try this recipe at your next gathering.